Okay, welcome, Steve Rosen, once again.
My friend Adam from Down Under. How are you, buddy?
Good. This is more of a catch-up rather than an interview.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you and I are communicating via email just about daily, and I'm always asking you for something and telling you to do something. So this is just kind of a catch up for both of us.
That's it. Today, what I really want to do, if it's okay with you, just mainly talk about the new audiobook, which is Van Halen's Voices.
Exactly. And before we start talking about that, Adam,
Yep.
I have a couple things I wanted to say. I wanted to tell everybody out there that neither audiobook happens without Adam Roach. You have gone so far above and beyond the call of duty for me, and without you, it doesn't happen. I mean, you've taken all the files, you've cleaned them, you've inserted them into the audiobook, you've gotten everything up on the My Soundwise page, which would have taken me a million years if I ever could have figured it out. You never give me any grief, even though you're in the middle probably of 100 other projects. And Adam, I need this. You got to send this right away. You got to send this. You always do that stuff, and above and beyond all that, there was just something about the first time we communicated, and I can't remember how we met. Maybe you remember. I felt that I knew you, I understood you, and I trusted you. I mean, honestly, one of the reasons that I waited so long to do an audiobook is because, well, my God, now I've got to go send all of my Van Halen interviews to somebody. And, I mean, even some professional companies, some engineers, it's like, they're not going to make copies.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that they were going to go release this stuff, but it's like, how do you really trust somebody? But you, I trusted immediately, and you were just a guy. So I don't know how it is we were meant to meet, but we did. And you're one of the most humble and honest people I've ever met. And I wanted to say that because seriously, anybody listening, these audiobooks do not happen without Adam Roach. In fact, my entire YouTube page never happens without you. So
Well, thank
there
you.
it is. Very welcome, man. And on top of that, you are like the quietest guy I've ever met. And maybe some of your fans and followers know that you are really capable of severe damage to me if I really get you angry. So I never push you over the boiling point. But seriously, man, you're amazing. And thank you. And everybody who's heard the audiobook needs to thank you for everything you've done as well. So there it is.
No, you're welcome. And I really thank you for putting that trust in me. So like you said, there's the stuff you've got, the Van Halen that you sent me, it's incredible. It's priceless, really.
Well, cool, and even all the other, I mean, you had my Jimmy Page interview and all the stuff that's up on my YouTube page, and Jeff Beck and Brian Carl Wilson, and so yeah,
Yeah.
it was all about trust and knowing the kind of integrity that you had. So
Yeah. No, thank you. I
there,
think it was through,
of course,
was it through Tony that we met, what's the name of the show? Van Halenville? I think it
it
was
was. You're
a
right,
long time ago. Yeah.
right. Fruitcake Tony, show me your pick.
Yeah, that's right.
That's what it was. So maybe I was on
Yep.
maybe one of the shows, and you came on as like in the chat room, and we kind of started chatting back and forth. Maybe,
Yeah. So I think
yeah, I
it's
think
nearly
it
been
was.
three years now.
How long ago was it?
I think nearly 3 years that we've been corresponding, doing the very first read through of the book, and because what do you remember when Tone Chaser came out? What year that was?
It was so I started it in 2020. I finished it in 2021, and I think by the time I got all the printing and everything together, I don't think it came out until 2022.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I
that's
think that was
right.
the first year. Yeah, for the first edition. So,
Yeah. Oh, there we go. Long time.
Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
Now,
Alrighty.
so over to Van Halen voices. Now, first of all, I want to say this: the interviews on here really are amazing. I mean, you've got the main ones, which I know you spoke about on the Dave and Dave Unchained podcast, where you spoke about all the guys from Van Halen, like David Lee Roth, Michael Anthony, Gary Sharon, Sammy Hagar. But to me, the ones I really enjoy are the ones like from the childhood, like Kevin Hill, what was the other one? Terry Gilgore. Those ones I love.
Yeah. I get it. I mean, honestly, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if Kevin Hill has ever done another interview. I mean, I've never seen one online. Maybe he has, but I mean, it's not like I've ever read anything from him in any other Van Halen books. I mean, at least I can't remember. So, those two interviews specifically were amazing.
Yeah.
So Terry Kilgore, as some of you may know, was a contemporary of Edward, grew up in Pasadena, and really knew Edward pretty well. I mean, they were pretty good friends. Terry was a guitar player, had a band called Ready Kilowatt, who played around. And I think I'm pretty positive they played some shows, some of those early shows with Van Halen. The famous Flyers, I'm pretty positive, it was Ready Kilowatt, would have opened the show for Van Halen.
Yep.
Somewhere. And Terry had an amazing memory. So those interviews come, and they happened because some of you may know, back in 1986, I was going to write Edward's authorized biography. So having him say, yes, you could write that book, that basically opened up every single door for me. So anybody I approached and I told them, hey, I'm writing Edward Van Halen's authorized biography, it's like, sure, man, when do you want to talk? I mean, honestly, who would have said no to that?
Yes.
I mean, if I was a guitar player and somebody approached me and I thought, well, maybe I could be in a book about Edward and it's going to be an authorized biography. Sure, man. What do you want to know? So that really opened all the doors. What's interesting is trying to remember how I actually contacted some of these people.
Yeah.
So this is 86, right? There's no internet. And I would not have asked Edward. I'm 99% positive I didn't say, Edward, hey man, who should I go reach out to about the book? I didn't do that. I didn't want to bother him.
Yeah.
Two, I mean, who knows if he would have remembered anyway. So I don't know how I knew about these people. I mean, did I know Terry Kilgore's name? Maybe, but I think he was still living in Pasadena at that time. And it's like, honestly, how did I find him? I mean, did we have phone books, actual paper phone books in 86, or was it already, I mean, I don't think there were cell phones. I mean, so, and certainly no internet. So I don't know how. I probably reached out to somebody who maybe knew some of those people.
Okay.
And even now I try to think, well, who is it I could have reached out to whose phone number I would have had or email that would have had that kind of information. I wish I could remember. So Terry's, and we read a little bit of that interview in the book, in that last chapter, or close to last chapter, which I've called Van Halen's Voices, hence the title for the audiobook. We hear the entire interview in the audiobook, and again, his memory is remarkable. I mean, him talking about the head that Edward got from the Rose Palace and the people that had used it, and hanging out with Edward at the stores and the guitar shops, and watching that interaction between Alex and Edward. I mean, he was there. He saw that,
Yeah.
Kind of that love-hate thing they always had. So I thought that was amazing.
The Terry Kilgore one goes for over 2 hours, the interview.
Oh, does it really?
Yeah.
Wow. I had no idea. It's funny because when I was working on the book, and I thought, well, I'm going to have this little section in the back where people are talking about him. I remember listening to Terry's interview, not the entire thing. I kind of do a, fast forward, and I come to a thing and, oh yeah, and Edward got his Les Paul, so those, I think the sections in the book aren't sort of what you'll hear in the audiobook. They're not, it's not one comment after another. I may have skipped forward to sort of, put together like a greatest hits kind of a thing. Yeah. But I had no idea. And the other thing is, Terry brought this up. So I've reached out to Terry subsequently. He's on Facebook and stuff, and we reached out, and we've sort of communicated back and forth. And he says, I gave him a Harvey Mandel album. And Harvey Mandel, again, was a guitar player from the 70s, who some people credit with sort of the first tapping stuff. Harvey did do tapping, but it was infinitely simpler than what Edward did. It was more kind of single notes, but he did do it. And I remember seeing Harvey Mandel to Whiskey. I'm trying to remember if I remember him tapping. I don't know if I really remember that. But so Terry tells me this story, and I go, there's no way I gave you a Harvey Mandel record. He goes, yeah, man, you did. And the thing is, it's so specific for him to say that. Not that he would lie anyway. But it's not like he said, oh, you gave me a Zeppelin record or a Black Sabbath record, which is, kind of a, that's more generic kind of a thing. But to be so specific about Harvey Mandel, knowing that he was a Harvey Mandel fan. So I don't think that I did the interview with him in person.
Okay.
I think maybe we met again somewhere. Honestly, can you tell if the interview, the audio in the audiobook was done in person or a phoner? I mean, can you tell, Adam?
I have to go back and have a listen. I can't remember.
Yeah. Because obviously I met him.
Yeah.
And the fact that I would have given him a Harvey Mandel record means we must have been talking about Harvey Mandel. I wouldn't have just given him a Harvey Mandel album out of the blue. I wouldn't have done that. And I had a bunch of Harvey Mandel records. So I think I wondered if he actually came to, my little pad, up in the Hollywood Hills, Weepaw Way.
Yeah.
Where I have my record collection stuff.
Yeah.
Some memories, man. People say, "Oh yeah, we met this and that." I did the NAMM show this past January. I've been there many times, but this is the first time I was there as a seller. I had the books and stuff, and people will come up, "Oh yeah, man, we met back in '87, and I bought a guitar from you on the recycler." I go, "No." Things I just have no memories. Strange, very strange. And Kevin Hill, I don't know where I would have known about Kevin Hill. So I probably interviewed Edward. In fact, I'm pretty positive I did. I done interviews with Edward where he talked about Broken Combs, that early band he was in when he was just a kid, And we've seen some of those pictures, or maybe one picture online where he's like, God, I don't know how old he is, 10 or 11. I think Kevin Hill is in the picture. I think it's like a one of those old time pictures.
Yep.
So I'm pretty positive I did the interview where he would have talked about the Broken Combs, and in there he mentioned Kevin Hill.
Okay.
So maybe I somehow I referenced an interview and I saw the name Kevin Hill. It's like, I mean, how on this earth would you go about finding someone whose last name was Hill? I mean, there must be, right? It's not like some strings last summer. I mean, there could have been thousands of them.
It's like a
you know?
Smith.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Jones, But yeah, his interview was amazing, and it's funny because that really early stuff is all of the kind of stuff I wanted to talk to Edward about for the book, for the authorized biography.
Yeah.
And that's when, I keep pushing him, Edward, we need to sit down. I need to do more interviews with you for the book. I need to talk to you, when you were just a little kid and growing up in, Amsterdam and blah, 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 And that interview with Kevin is all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
They played cowboys and Indians. They played, soldiers and war and built those little boxes and what was that like, Edward, playing in those early bands? And, Alex talks about that a little bit in his book. I thought there would be more of that. I mean, there's some wonderful stuff in there. I just thought there would have been more of that because Alex is the last word on those memories, right? I mean, who else?
Yeah.
Who else knows, right? The parents are gone. There are no other brothers or sisters. There might be some other relatives that are around, maybe live back in Europe, but I can't imagine how old they'd be by now. So, I thought Alex's book would address that even more because, as you said, that's what's really fascinating.
Oh, yeah.
About the audiobook and learning that stuff about Edward. And yeah, you think of him, crawling through these little cardboard box forts that they made. I mean, that's so amazing,
Yes.
So yeah, so I knew that the Kevin Hill interview had to be in the book, and I knew that the Terry Kilgore interview had to be
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing for me too, like when I listen to these, like if I was a movie producer or something doing a documentary about Van Halen and wanted to include some of his early years, this would be the type of stuff you'd want to reference to. I mean, like you said, there is some stuff in the brothers book, but the way that Kevin really describes it, you can really picture what they were going through as little kids growing up doing these different things. I've got part of the interview here, which I'm going to play soon. But yeah, it's just amazing hearing those little stories and exactly the way he was as a kid.
Yeah, no, it was amazing. And that's an amazing idea about, when the Van Halen movie gets made, if anybody's listening out there, what an unbelievable source of information. I mean, somebody who was there, in the moment and describes that and how would you interpret that, in a producer's mind, director's mind, and, all that stuff, because Kevin goes into a fair amount of detail.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, it is an interesting insight, Adam. Very cool.
Actually, do you want me to play a little bit of that now?
Yeah. Let's take a listen.
All right, let's have a listen. So this is a little bit of Kevin Hill talking to Steve here about little Eddie Van Halen.
And my mother used to drive Edward and I to school for a 7:30 class before regular school started, which was our music class.
Mm-hmm.
And we were in string class for a while. I dropped out of it. I got discouraged. But Ed was amazing at the violin even then, and Alex was even better. I mean,
Alex was playing violin as well? They were both
Alex
playing violin?
was like in advanced. He wasn't in our class. He was gnarly, great at it. And he also was incredibly accomplished at the time for flute, clarinet, and saxophone, and piano.
So things like that you hadn't really noticed before. I mean, I know that there has been talk about the other instruments, I'll keep going.
At that age. I mean, it was amazing.
So what age?
Pick any one of them up and play.
So what age are you talking about now?
I'm talking about I was 8, Alex was like 10 and 11.
Mm-hmm.
It was like 2 years where we lived there.
And which school is this?
Hamilton Elementary.
Hamilton Elementary.
It's on like Del Mar in Pasadena there.
So you know where that is?
I do. Yeah, Del Mar's a pretty big street in Pasadena.
Okay.
It's like a pretty big kind of a, thoroughfare. I don't know if it's like north, southeast west, but it's a big street. I think there might even be a Del Mar off ramp off the freeway.
All right.
You know, so yeah, it was a major street. And Hamilton, I mean, I knew about Hamilton High and stuff. Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, you never hear anybody talking about Alex playing the clarinet, flute and stuff. I mean, that's just crazy. And Edward said, and he talks about it in Tone Chaser, that both he and Alan took violin, and that Al was much better than he was on violin, which is pretty incredible.
Yeah.
You know, and when you think about it, so we can understand Edward as a keyboard player, you know, doing Jump and hearing, you know, The Cradle Will Rock, you know, various keyboard parts, because he took piano.
Yeah.
I believe, even though Edward said he never took it seriously, the fact that he did play violin for a while, because violin obviously is it's a stringed instrument, of course, but it's an entirely different instrument than, well, you know these things, than guitar, right? It's fretless, and your hand is this way. So maybe, you know, in his brain, maybe the tapping thing was being formed. I don't know, but just, you know, the technique of playing a violin and the way that you would hold the bow, maybe that somehow, you know, rubbed off later on when he was doing his picking and you know, his fingerings. Maybe some of those classical pieces that he must have been learning, you know, those kinds of harmonic structures rubbed off on him years later, which is why his songwriting is so incredibly inventive and original, you know. So I think he absorbed all of that stuff, you know, which is what made him, you know, such a one of a kind.
I think he goes into here, talks about the Broken Combs. So.
When was Broken Combs?
That was in between age 8 and 9, I'd say somewhere between 63 and 65.
And who were the people in the band?
Alex, Edward, my brother, and myself.
Oh, just the four of you?
Yeah.
So whose idea was it to put the Broken Combs together?
All of ours. I thought of the name.
Oh, really?
I thought of the name. In fact, I made a thing out of cardboard, like if you'd cut up that box and open it out, so it would stand like a partition.
Right.
I made a nice one that had the broken combs going across it, and I had real combs that I broke in half and taped them onto this thing. Also, I drew some broken ones, you know, and like little marks, like they had just snapped or something, you know.
What a great little backdrop.
I mean, that is just so great, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, you know.
Well, this interview goes for over 30 minutes, and he goes into a lot about talking about the younger days, how Eddie was as a kid, and it sounds like you're in person with him as well. It's like it's not a phone line, is it?
It really does sound, because the quality is so good. I think it was in person too. Now here's another situation. I wish I could tell everybody, oh yeah, I drove out to Pasadena and went to Kevin's house where he was living at the time.
Yeah.
Or he came out to, Weepaw Way. I do not remember, you know. I do not remember, but yeah, it does definitely sound like it was in person. I mean, for me, if I was a Van Halen fan and I heard that, I just don't think that kind of personal history exists anywhere else. I mean, you know, it's in the audiobook with so many of these other incredible interviews with people that no one has ever interviewed. They may have been referenced, and there might be text references, but you know, as far as I know, there's never been another interview with Kevin Hill, a live interview, you know, an actual audio interview. So,
well, I'm just looking up here on YouTube because it's got everything, and there's nothing to do with Kevin Hill and the Broken Combs. So I think
interesting.
This is the only interview that's out there, for me anyway. What I can find.
Yeah, I mean, not trying to put in a shameless plug here,
Mm.
but to my mind, hearing that Kevin Hill interview is worth the price of the entire audiobook. That's me.
Oh, it is.
Now, for $14.99, I look, and I'm not trying to sell audiobooks here, but I just think it's such a timeless, it truly is a timeless piece of history.
Yeah.
And, I just think it's amazing. So,
Yeah.
anyway.
And this is only one of these out of how many? Only 20, I think it is.
Just one of them.
Yeah. So the next one I've got up on here is the Kim Fowley one, where he was there at the young stage as well, first talking about when he first saw Van Halen. So I'll just play a little bit of this and then we can go into it.
When did you first see the group, Kim?
I first saw the group at Gazzari's. Since I walked in, spoke with David Lee Roth, who told me for a full hour how this was the ultimate band in the world, and that all four members had tremendous reasons for being in it, and he proceeded to give elaborate explanations about the other three, even over himself, which I thought was pretty unique. And he just went on and on.
So again, yeah, so Kim Fowley. Do you remember how this one came about?
I do. Kim, I knew about. So Kim Fowley was sort of this gadabout in Hollywood. He knew everybody. He was actually a songwriter. He actually wrote a couple songs that became pretty big. These are earlier songs. I think these songs might have been out like in the 60s, early 60s.
Yep.
So not like they were huge, like rock hits, but he was a legit songwriter. He discovered the Runaways.
That's right.
Managed the Runaways, right? Joan Jett, that was all Kim. And he was always thinking about stuff like that. He was always putting that kind of thing together. And he was everywhere. And it was always on the radio, and it was always at clubs and parties and stuff. So I knew about Kim. I had never met him. I take that back. I probably had run into Kim at some of these record parties, at a club somewhere. Probably said hello. I mean, I don't know if he knew who I was, but I did know about Kim Fowley. And Kim I was able to track down. I probably asked someone, hey man, how do I find Kim Fowley? Here's his number, here's his office number. And so I remember going up, I think it was his office, just somewhere on Sunset Boulevard. He had some little office up there. And I think in the interview, I think I mentioned there's also a girl there. I think it was just a friend of his.
That's right, yeah.
Who also knew about Van Halen. I think
Kathy Bell.
Kathy Bell. I think she offers one or two comments. Again, I think she was kind of one of those people who was always around, and she hung out with Kim. And Kim was amazing. And Kim is referenced on the back of the first record. So look on the back of the first record, and there's credits, and there's Kim Fowley. Because Kim actually brought the band, I believe, to the attention of Rodney Bingenheimer. Rodney was another one of these guys who was all around Hollywood. He actually had a little club called Rodney's E Club, as in English. And bands who came into town would go by Rodney's afterwards. And I mean, like big bands. Bowie used to hang out, and Zeppelin, and it was like where all the groupies went. I mean, it was a pretty fun club. I think Rodney was one of the very first people to play Van Halen on one of his shows. I think maybe it was one of the demos, maybe the Gene Simmons demo. But Rodney was one of the very early supporters. And I'm pretty positive Kim brought the band to Rodney's attention. And so, Kim is, kind of a bigger, larger than life guy, and, talks about them, and actually reaches out to a very heavy A&R guy. I can't remember his name. It's in the interview, to come check out Van Halen. And this guy comes and goes, oh, they sound like Led Zeppelin or something. And Kim says, yeah, and what's wrong with that, But so Kim was pretty important. Kim passed away a while ago,
Mm.
so which makes the interview even more historic. But Kim was great. You know, he was really open about talking about the band and stuff.
Yeah, and there is a story there. He talks about giving a song to Van Halen called "Young and Wild," which is he co-wrote, and apparently that's on YouTube as well somewhere.
That's it. Yeah. So Kim in his own, very cool way, was a hustler, and why not try to get a song to Van Halen? I mean, come on, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if they ever demoed it or ever, that I don't know.
Yeah.
Van Halen historians would know that better than I would. But yeah. So Kim tried to get a song to him. That's funny.
Yeah. So some great stuff in that interview as well. So.
Yeah. Very, very cool interview. That was great. That was in person.
Yeah, for sure.
That was in person. Yeah.
Actually, I do have a little bit of the Terry Gilgore here, so maybe we have a listen to that and see if we can see if it's in person.
Yeah.
Telephone. This is a little bit.
Played a gig in the 8th grade that I got, and they said another band's going to show up and do some Cream stuff. Well, it was Edward and Frank Souza on bass and Alex on drums, and this is a band, I don't know, they called it Bald or Ballo or TR. Right. Yeah, it was very, very, very many years ago. And basically, he wasn't doing anything more then than just playing perfect renditions of Eric Clapton stuff off of Wheels of Fire and Disraeli Gears, with an occasional Grand Funk and a Black Sabbath tune thrown in on the top of it. And that's what he was doing, basically. But he did it so well, his ear was always so, I mean, he picked things up that, I don't know, they say it's piano classical background. I think it's a bunch of horse shit. He knows how to play the piano, he knew that, but I don't think he did a damn thing for his guitar playing, except with the exception that he was just a natural musician. He was made to be, he was born into it, so.
So yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, man, hard to tell. The band he's talking about though, and I think Edward, I don't know if Edward ever mentioned the name of that band to anybody ever, because I don't ever see it coming up in any other books, but he mentioned that to me. Or maybe, I'm sorry, maybe Alex did.
Okay.
I think I asked Alice, well, what was some of the other names of the bands? And I think he said for a short time we were called Bald. And Terry, what he's saying there, he's trying to spell it. They spelled it, Alex told me this, B-A-U-L-D, Bald. I mean, who knows what that means. But, so it's funny. So Terry feels that Edward's playing the piano. I had no effect on his guitar playing. I disagree. I do. Look, I don't think it was a profound influence, and maybe it's subliminal, but I believe it was there. But Terry was great, man. I mean, his memories, and he talks about seeing those guys, kind of beat the hell out of each other in these fist fights and stuff.
Yeah.
Edward getting that Les Paul, really early on, and trying to understand how the family could afford that, like a Les Paul, for him, early on. He had some great stories.
Yeah.
Very cool guy. I don't know if anybody listening knows, but we had some terrible fires out here recently, and Terry's house was burned down. So terrible. I know he had a bunch of guitars in there and stuff. And, I think there's a
the GoFundMe.
I forget what it's. Yeah, exactly. A FundMe page. But I think if you type in Terry Kilgore, that was horrible. Terry lived in Glendora, which was one of the areas that were hit by the fires. Anyway, but Terry's cool, man. And then Terry obviously famously goes on to play in David Lee Roth's band. Terry was and is an amazing guitar player. Incredible guitar player.
So actually, before that one goes for over 2 hours, and I mean, I've made notes here. There's lots of notes about the Terry Gilgore one, so you've got to listen. Really got to hear this one. It's really good.
Wow. Yeah, that was a great interview.
Yeah,
great. In fact, when I was pulling stuff for the audio, like I said, I would kind of jump around, and I hear a section, I go, oh my God, that's amazing, had I put in all the cool stuff, because that Terry Kilgore that section in the book is pretty long. I mean, it would have been like,
Yeah.
10 pages long. I didn't have the pages to do that, but yeah, to me, that interview is like unbelievable. And Terry is somebody who is mentioned in a lot of books, Van Halen books. He was there. He was a contemporary.
Yeah,
Pretty cool.
Because really, when you think about it, this Van Halen Voices audiobook it's really like the companion to Tone Chaser, isn't it? It's like the not
Right.
the sequel, but part of the history of what you're talking about. It's in Tone
Right.
Chaser.
Right, exactly.
Hmm.
That's exactly what it is. The companion,
Yeah, that's it.
definitely. And obviously putting together that first audiobook was a feat. I mean, that was a ton of work. I mean, the amount of work you had, and I would send you tapes, and I'm thinking he's gonna misplace the tape. He's gonna do, because I was trying to send him in the order that I knew, and I thought, oh my God, if he gets one out of order, or if he misplaces it, I wouldn't even know what tape to send you. That's how badly organized I was. In some ways, I was really organized. In other ways, it was like, leave it up to Adam Roach. And if he gets it wrong, I can yell at him, But yeah, it was a long process, man. And just doing the narration, deciding that I was going to do the narration myself after thinking, I need to bring somebody in. I can't do this, And that was kind of fun at moments. A lot of times it wasn't, because I'd screw up and stumble over a word, or I'd get something wrong. And
I think the hardest part is like going through it, reading through Tone Chaser, and you'd have one part of the audio book, like one of your interviews, on one of the files, but then like the next sentence would be on a different file. So I go back and check that. But the good news is some of those ones that aren't in Tone Chaser, we have put on the end of the audio book. It's right at the end of Tone Chaser, the audio book. We put like a couple of extra spots there for people who do have the audio book can have a look at that as well.
Right, exactly. I forgot about that. Yeah, that's great. That's cool.
There's Between Us Two. Speak about that. Then there's the spinal tapping lesson, which is not in the audio book. Sorry, not in the original book. So there's a lot of stuff, a lot of unheard material.
That's true, and actually, so those are some extra sections we put in the Van Halen's Voices audiobook. But in the actual first audiobook, so if you're reading along with the book, I think some people probably did that, you'll realize that where a comment may have ended from Edward or my question is like, again, for purposes of length, my question may have wandered on for, 300 words. Well, if I had done that and I verbatim wrote what my question was and what Edward's responses were, I mean, the book would have been 800 pages long. Obviously I couldn't do that. So what you're reading in the book are edited versions, which are still capturing the essence entirely of my question and Edward's response. But when you get the audio book, you go, oh my God, Edward, this stuff from Edward's not in there. And that stuff's all over the place. And you and I, you would talk, say, hey, should I include this and this and that, and some stuff was just probably, I don't know, just maybe nonsense stuff, or he's going, I said, no, leave that out, But so even in the first audiobook, there's all this content that is not in, that you're not reading in the book.
Yeah.
So on that aspect of it, there's a ton of stuff in the first audiobook that's not in the book.
And there's still lots more that hasn't been out there yet.
Yeah.
So stay tuned.
There's more. Exactly. Companion book number 3.
That's right.
Audio book number 3. So,
exactly. So going back to the Van Halen Voices, so the other interviews, like we said, all the guys from Van Halen, but then you also got the guitar techs, like, Zeke Clark. Who else is there? You got the Lynn Halsworth, you got Wayne Chauvel, You got Rudy Laren.
Yeah, Rudy.
Yeah, so there's lots of really interesting things in this audiobook.
Yeah, no, I tried to, pull some really kind of important interviews, stuff that would be cool. I know that the Zeke Clark interview, I think, was up, and the response to it was amazing because nobody that close to Edward had ever done such a deep dive into his gear.
Yep.
And, I'm there with Zeke, and he's describing Edward's, again, I think might have been his live setup, maybe. I can't remember how, but he's describing each piece of gear and the guitars and stuff,
Yep.
And the interviews with Rudy, again, those were done. Well, so was Zeke. Zeke, that interview was done a little bit later, but the one with Rudy, I had met Rudy prior to interviewing him.
Okay.
And obviously I knew his name, so I thought, well, my God, he's got to be in the book, So I reached out to him to speak with him, and that's what that interview is.
Yep.
Yeah, and I knew about people like Lynn Ellsworth. I knew the name, and I knew that he was somebody I had to speak to about the book. Wayne Charvel, obviously, I knew about Charvel guitars, so I knew I had to speak to Wayne. And obviously, when I was writing the book, though I had interviewed Alex, I think I interviewed him in '83, and I don't think anybody's ever heard that interview.
Yeah, that's right. That's on there too.
It is on there. Oh, it is there. Yeah. So, but I knew obviously if I was writing a book, I had to interview Alex. So he was very generous with his time, and I think again we spoke over the course of 2 days, and that now becomes the famous 6-part interview. And I'd bet money that Alex Van Halen never did an interview that in depth, then or now. So that's those are my feelings. If somebody can prove me wrong, I'll listen to what you have to say. But that was an amazing interview, right?
Yeah, it was.
Michael Anthony, I interviewed for the book, and Mike was very generous with his time. Dave, I had interviewed around women and children first, so it wasn't specifically for the book.
Yep.
Gary Sharon, again, was much later. I forget when I interviewed Gary, but that was much, much later.
Yeah.
I think he was doing a solo record, but obviously I, wanted to ask him about working with Van Halen, and that's the little. Did we use the entire interview with him, or did we just take an excerpt?
I think we just put like maybe 10 minutes because
10 minutes, yeah.
Like I said, I think the whole interview went for about 49 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just more talking about Extreme and his new album. What else? Yeah, him and Nuno. So there's other stuff. Yeah, the one part talking about Eddie, which is in the audiobook.
Yeah, and I could tell when I was talking to him that he wanted to talk about his solo career.
Yeah.
Solo. He did not want to talk about Van Halen. So, obviously there was so much more I could have asked, but I could tell. I thought to myself, don't be a jerk, man. Don't keep, pushing him into talking about Edward. Yeah. But at least we do have a few comments with him.
Oh, yeah.
And then that interview, right, in '86 with Sammy. And again, did Sammy Hagar ever do an interview on his own while in Van Halen? If it's out there, I've never seen one. It's always with Edward.
Yeah.
Right, or Edward alone.
Yeah.
So, and I thought that was a pretty cool interview.
And he comments about that too. He says to you, I don't really usually do this. I don't do like many interviews.
Oh, does he really?
Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, and that one stayed hidden. So I have my archive index, and it's alphabetical. And it'll say Peter Frampton, and if I was thorough, it would have a date, and then the number of the cassette and what binder it's in. So I have these binders, and you've seen them. You've seen a picture of it in the book, right? For the Twilight tapes, right? There's binders that have space for 16 cassettes in them. So every binder was labeled, and every cassette every cassette was labeled with an artist, but sometimes the dates. Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Yeah.
And there you can see the page of the interviews. And so the Sammy Hagar interview, because it was Sammy by himself and everything was alphabetized, it wasn't there under Van Halen interviews. In other words, Alex Van Halen, Edward Van Halen, you know, but Sammy Hagar would have been under H, right, for Hagar, you know. So, and I knew I'd interviewed Sammy once or twice, but I thought that, oh, these are just interviews before Sammy joined Van Halen. But then I looked at the one had a date on it. I go, oh my gosh, that's Sammy right after he joins. So, yeah, I think that's a pretty cool interview. It really gives you a sense of what it was like for him being in the band and that kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure.
So, yeah, that was pretty great.
Yeah. Now, the other interview, just want to make note of this one. Is it Jose Arredondo? Is that how you say his name? So, anyone that does get the audio book, you'll see it comes up like this. Sorry. And there's a little button here. So, over there, if you click that, goes the PDF.
So this is Jose Arredondo, who had worked on Edwards amps. He did a lot of mods. He worked on a lot of people's amps.
Yep.
I mean, he was a pretty famous guy. And it's funny because in the book I write about it, and I don't know if Edward asked me about Jose or I brought it up. And it was just that same day that I interviewed Jose earlier in the day. I'm now up at 5150 talking to Edward. And he says, oh, is he mad at me? And I go, well, no. And somehow about Edward, they were working on the amp and Edward was too busy, or some money was supposed to change hands and didn't, or I can't remember. So if you want to find out, people, go buy the book. But yeah, Jose was amazing. When I was putting the Van Halen's Voices audiobook together, I thought Jose has to be included. You know, he was really important. And after listening to about 3 minutes of the interview, I go, wow, this is incredibly difficult to understand. Jose was Argentinian, Venezuelan, Portuguese. I can't remember. But whatever it was, yeah, his accent was, I don't even know how I understood him when I was interviewing. You know, he'd probably say something, I'd probably go, oh, yeah, cool. Oh, right. You know what I mean? It's like, I figured I'll worry about it when I get home. But Alan Garber, who was probably the most knowledgeable Van Halen expert in terms of gear and tones and pickups and every other aspect of Edward's playing in the world. You know, Guitar World routinely uses him because he does these insanely deep dive transcriptions of Van Halen songs and every note. So Alan is someone I've gotten to know over the internet, and I think I had reached out to him. Hey man, would you transcribe this? And I thought, well, he's going to hear the first 3 minutes and he's going to go, this is not possible. And so there it is. Yeah, man, just the amount of work that he did.
Yeah.
Just to hear that.
When you go into it, you can see that it's the whole
unbelievable.
It's a long interview.
It was. Honestly, I don't know how he did it.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
But that's an amazing interview.
It is. Yeah.
It really is. And again, I don't think there's ever been another interview, maybe some text interviews, even then I don't know. Certainly everybody knows about Jose. He's a famous guy. But I doubt that whether there's ever been another interview that went this deep. I mean,
well, that one goes,
I've never seen one or heard one.
Yeah, that one goes for 106 minutes.
Wow, I had no idea it was that long.
So just, go through all these times. Like, there are a lot, big interviews there. Like Terry Gilgall, like I said, over 2 hours. Ruth Laren's over nearly 2 hours as well, talking about all of Eddie's gear and equipment. Dan Martin's like 40 minutes. Ken Dean, 50 minutes. there's just so much audio there. It's it really is another book.
Yeah, I had no idea those interviews were that long, to be
Mm.
honest. Dan Martin's another amazing guy. He worked for St. Louis music store in St. Louis,
Yeah.
and sold Edward the famous V. You know, that was Dan's guitar, and I think sold him. Again, it's in the interview, and it's in the audiobook. But sold him many instruments. Sold instruments to all kinds of people.
Mm.
Very famous guitar guy. Just looking around, there's a picture of me and Dan somewhere on the walls here. But I ran into Dan somewhere, maybe a NAMM show. So I think I'm wearing a NAMM T-shirt. I can't remember, but he was great. And I did a story for Guitar World about Dan running down all the guitars he had sold to Edward.
Okay.
Very cool guy, very nice guy. Ken Dean was the studio manager for 5150, and Ken was always there. You know, I'd be up at 5150, and Ken would be working in some corner, soldering something or doing something on the computer or doing something. Ken was great. Ken lived in Big Bear. Big Bear is a resort area. There's also people live there, but it was in the mountains. And I think from Edwards 5150, it was at least a 2-hour drive.
Mm.
Now, Big Bear was up in the mountain, so it would snow.
Mm.
So, I mean, there were times when, you know, there'd be traffic alerts. Big Bear's closed. I mean, you can't get in or out. I mean, that's how much it snowed there. And I think I asked him once, I go, how can you possibly do that? How can you drive 4 hours a day minimally to be at Edwards? And I think what he said was, I don't think he came in every day. Or if he did, he would literally leave the house at like 4 in the morning where there was no traffic, you know, and work till much later at night. But he was always there, you know, and he had a lot of input with the building of 5150.
Okay.
You know, he was one of the people involved. So he was amazing. And I am pretty positive Ken never did another interview.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very cool to talk to, and you know, he knew me, and you know, knew I was working on the book, and so he was willing to talk to me. But I don't think that I don't think Ken ever did any other interviews. So it's very cool. And the other thing I wanted to mention, you know, you bring up all these names, and I just kind of thought about it, and it's very sad that a lot of these people have passed away. They're gone. Dan Martin, Kim Fowley, Lynn Ellsworth, Wayne Charvel.
Yeah,
I think there might be a few others. Jose Arredondo. So, I mean, it's horrible. I mean, really sad. I mean, I think it's cool that kind of their legacy, not that I'm responsible in any way for that, but at least part of, you know, all of these amazing things these people did, you know, it's kind of captured there in the book and stuff. And so, yeah, I mean, it's sad. I mean, I look at my list in general. I told you I had, you know, all my stuff alphabetized. I mean, there are, I bet there's like 20% of the people I've interviewed are gone. You know? Sad, you know. I mean, some of them were older and you know, natural causes, but some of them, you know, just succumbed to various illnesses and stuff. And I don't want to be a downer, but
no. I mean, it's great
you know,
that you captured this, though. You know.
I mean, it is, you know, and again, look, man, I'm not saying I'm not preserving any. Their legacy is their own. They created that, you know. But you know, if I didn't do these interviews, you know, maybe none exist. You know, we only have hearsay of who these people were and what they spoke like and sound like. Anyway, you know, it's
I mean, they're all great.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, so like I said, there's a lot of hours there of listening. So, and I mean, it's
Yeah,
not,
yeah.
so like you said, even just that one interview is worth $14.99, whatever it is. So it's amazing getting
Yeah,
all
man,
that stuff.
I think so. You
Yeah,
know, it's funny because in the original audiobook, I was actually going to embed all the interviews in the Van Halen's Voices chapter
yeah,
with those actual interviews.
that's right. Yeah,
And rather than me reading them, had they been the entire interview, because I was really thinking of the amount of work
no,
it would have required on your part. Because not only do you have to record, clean it and get all that kind of, you would now have to listen and find those parts. Now, I might have been able to find some of the parts for you, but I probably wouldn't have done that. I would have said, go find them yourself. I mean, it would have just taken a very long time.
yeah,
Yeah, you know what I mean? And especially since some of the interviews, so I think I probably only did it a couple times where I would have taken a section of interview from 5 minutes into the original interview and another section 8 minutes. I think
yeah,
pretty much they were contiguous,
Oh,
one after the other. But I know there were a couple times I didn't do that. So for you to have found that stuff would have been
yeah,
insanity.
yeah,
And I think it would have added, honestly, I mean, it would have added a lot more time into the pre-production of it, to push back the release.
yeah.
Anyway, doing it the way we did in a separate audiobook.
It's good. Yeah,
We did everything top to bottom, clean. I think that was far and away the best.
yeah.
So,
That's good.
yeah, I think it's really special. Both audiobooks are really amazing. I don't think you'll hear anything like this anywhere else.
Mm.
And you get to hear Edward speaking from '78. I mean, I don't know. It's pretty cool. It's
It
pretty
is.
cool. So
Yeah,
go check it out, you guys.
yeah, for sure. And just a quick little plug for your YouTube channel as well. For those who haven't seen it, make sure you check out your interviews that's been coming out, and there's lots more coming out. But they're great interviews there as well with Steve I, Paul Gilbert, Steve Lukather, Dave Mustaine. There's heaps. It's incredible.
Cool. Yeah, yeah. I think the YouTube channel is amazing.
Mm.
I mean, I say that not because I've done that stuff, but again because those interviews are they're really historic. They took place in a lot of these artists' careers when maybe they only had one or two records out, and I think the way that they looked at their career and their music back then was much, much different than the interview they would have done 20 years later or after being successful or after doing these tours. It's just, they were just different. And to hear them talk about their music back then, and to talk about an album that maybe had just come out then, in that period, to me is amazing.
Yep.
And as Adam mentioned, I was able to unearth some actual videos I did. One with Steve Vai that I think is really extraordinary.
That's great. Yeah.
Steve Vai giving me and giving the world his life lessons.
Yeah.
And it's pretty amazing. The interview with Lukather, that's up at Luke's house. That's incredible.
Paul Gilbert, that was a really good one too.
Paul Gilbert,
Mm.
what a great one that is. And that one just went up, and you could hear Paul playing, and that's in his little studio in North Hollywood. And I'd known Paul for a long time by then, and he kindly let me, come over and hang out. Paul Gilbert's unique sense of humor and wit and charm, and you hear what a remarkable guitar player he is. I mean, yeah, that's incredible. So yeah, go check out my YouTube page.
Mm.
I've really tried to cherry pick some amazing stuff, some stuff that meant something to me, and like I mentioned, there's a Jimmy Page interview up there.
You got everyone on there. Michael Jackson, Gene Simmons. It's just endless.
David Gilmour, John Frusciante.
Yeah.
Some incredible stuff.
Oh, there is.
Amazing stuff.
Yeah.
And it's all free, people. All you got to do is click on like or whatever that is and
That's it.
subscribe and allow us to put up some more cool stuff for all you guys.
Yeah.
So,
No, that's great.
yeah.
But yeah, definitely check out Van Halen's Voices and Tone Chaser on Soundwise. You can just download the app. Like I said, it's easy to get. Just get this little app here. So the Soundwise app comes up like that. You'll see both books are available.
Yeah.
It's easy. You can listen to it anywhere.
Again, I think it's I think we did an amazing job. I think it's unique. You know, I think Van Halen fans would just really, really love it. You know, and if you have the book, you know, you kind of read along and hear him talking. I mean, it's you know, it's like a multi-sensory thing going on there. So yeah, go check it out, everybody.
That's it. And there's lots more to come. So check it out.
Lots more to come.
All right. Well, thanks, Steve.
Thank you, Adam, as always. Yeah, man, I'm sure we'll talk soon. I'm sure I'll be reaching out to give you more work and make your day miserable. So
Yeah, well, I'll look forward to it.
You can run, you cannot hide, pal. So
It's a run.
thanks, everybody.